Ken Ivory, a Republican lawmaker from the state of Utah who authored legislation that would empower parents to challenge and potentially remove books from schools that they deemed inappropriate. Shortly after the governor signed his bill into law, however, one clever parent submitted a challenge to a book that he didn't want to be challenged. I'm of course talking about the Holy Bible, and this parent argued that the Bible was one of the most sex-ridden books around, containing incest, onanism, bestiality, prostitution, genital mutilation, fellatio, dildos, rape, and even infanticide. And this parent concluded by saying that this porn should be removed from schools. Now, because of this law, that parent's request had to be taken seriously, and it was. And in response to this request to remove the Bible from schools, Ken Ivory condemned that parent, even though he passed the law that enabled this challenge, by saying, as LGBTQ Nation explains, that it was a political stunt to, quote, drain school resources, and added, for people to minimize that and to make a mockery of it, referring to his law, is very sad, he complained. In other words, when he sponsored legislation that would lead to books being banned in schools, he didn't intend for that book to be banned, only the ones that he doesn't like. The Davis School District announced that it would indeed be pulling the Bible from elementary and middle school shelves due to, quote, vulgarity and violence. As AP explains, State Representative Ken Ivory, the Sensitive Materials Law's Republican sponsor, rebuffed the idea that his law paved the way for the Bible to be banned. Though he defended the review process after the sacred text removal, he said that the Davis School District had overstepped its role by removing the Bible from the middle and elementary schools because of criteria not in state law. Oh, okay. Ivory urged the legislature to change the law so book removal decisions have to be overseen by elected officials at open public meetings, not the kind of committee that decided to remove the Bible from middle and elementary schools in the Davis School District. But it gets even better, because he admits that the Bible does have some adult themes in it, but that shouldn't justify it being pulled from school shelves. Listen.
Yes, the Bible is best taught at home. That does not mean that the Bible should be, could be, must be removed from schools. That's a leap of logic that some have inappropriately made.
Hey, Ken, have you considered that maybe you should apply that logic to other books? The Handmaid's Tale, any of the books about race or LGBTQ plus people that were removed? Why is that set of standards okay for the Bible, but not other books? Yeah. It's just, they're so hypocritical that they don't even care how hypocritical they sound. And over 100 people showed up to protest at the state capitol following this decision. AP continues, concerned parents and children holding signs that read the Bible as the original textbook and remove porn, not the Bible, said they were outraged after the Davis School District announced that a review committee concluded the Bible was too violent or vulgar for young children. A Davis County mother of 3 kids carrying children's Bibles to the demonstration said districts could weigh banning certain titles with controversial material, but not religious texts like the Bible. Quote, we love the Bible, we love God, and we need God in our nation, she said. Oh, okay, that sounds like a justification for keeping this violent pornographic book in schools. I don't know how to even respond to that. I don't understand. I don't understand your logic, okay? There is no logic. That's why I can't understand it. See, according to her, banning controversial material is good only if it's controversial material that she doesn't like. But let me ask you this. Does this sound like content that's appropriate for elementary age students? Deuteronomy 25:11-12, quote, if 2 men, a man and his countrymen, are struggling together, and the wife of one comes near to deliver her husband from the hand of the one who is striking him, and puts out her hand and seizes his genitals, then you shall cut off her hand. You shall not show pity. Does that sound like something that's appropriate for elementary school students? Do you think a first grader should hear that? How about this? Ezekiel 16:17. You also took the fine jewelry I gave you, and jewelry made of my gold and silver, and you made for yourself male idols and engaged in prostitution with them. They're talking about dildos. They're talking about a woman using dildos to masturbate. Do you think that that's appropriate for elementary age children? Really? You gave this book to all of your kids? Why do you want to sexualize kids? You sound like a groomer to me. In fact, all of these parents who showed up to protest the Bible being removed sounds like groomers. Why would you allow this pornographic material in schools when very clearly kids should not be subjected to this content? They shouldn't have access to stories about women masturbating with dildos. Of course, the hypocrisy is going to be lost on them. The Salt Lake Tribune explains, with a unanimous vote late Tuesday afternoon, members of Davis School District's Board of Education moved to return the religious text to library shelves for students of all ages. The highly anticipated reversal comes about 1 month after a review committee of staff and parents appointed by the district was initially determined that the Bible contained vulgarity or violence and should have access limited to just high schools. The district also released a statement saying that its policy was never intentionally manipulated to undermine Utah's sensitive materials law. It said the process played out as it was supposed to, and it noted reviews have been conducted on 60 challenged books, with 37 removed. Several members of the Board of Education said Tuesday that the Bible is personally important to them, and they are glad to see it on shelves again. Quote, "It is my firm opinion that the King James Version of the Bible is a historically significant, very important book of scripture with deep spiritual meaning for many people," said Bridget Gerard, the board's vice president. You can see how quickly these book banners violated their own standards of what is and isn't appropriate for children because it came to material that they liked. Even if there are literally depictions of bestiality and rape and sex and masturbation, they said, that's fine. Kids should be able to see that because we think it's okay. We think the deeper message here is more important than the pornographic content. Now, the legislature apparently did not heed Ivory's call for this law to be revised because guess what? We're not done yet, baby, because after receiving 2 requests from parents to challenge the Book of Mormon due to its portrayal of physical and sexual violence, that book is now officially being reviewed and may be pulled from school shelves next. They have a point, right? If these lawmakers said that sexual content is inappropriate for kids, then why do you make exceptions for holy books? Is sexual content bad or is it not bad? I mean, if you're consistent, you would conclude that either all of it's okay or none of it's okay. But when you're a Christian supremacist or a religious fundamentalist of any kind in this country, you aren't necessarily wrong to think that the world revolves around you, because we have lawmakers who constantly kowtow to this space of people who have one standard for themselves and a different standard for everyone else. See, a book about queer kids or any LGBTQ plus related content is grooming and sexualizing children, but the Bible, well, that's not grooming and sexualizing children, even if it has things that they say are inappropriate when it's in other books, because fuck you. That's why. They don't care, right?
Christopher Williams, the director of communication for Davis School District, says that the review committee, quote, decided to retain the book in school library circulation only at the high school level based on age appropriateness due to vulgarity or violence. The Sensitive Materials in Schools Act, which was passed last year, bans books with pornographic or indecent material from schools and school libraries. The parent who initially complained about the Bible said that it contains incest, onanism, bestiality, prostitution, genital mutilation, fellatio, dildos, rape, and infanticide.
Your rule as written, unless you add except for the Bible into the letter of your rule, makes the Bible completely, exposes the Bible for what it is, which is a book with a lot of really good lessons in it that are frequently taught through genocide. Like, yeah. Okay, don't enslave the Hebrews, or we're gonna kill all the babies in Egypt, the firstborn babies in Egypt. Don't have premarital sex because God's gonna kill everyone except the animals with a flood. Mm-hmm. And as I'm discovering,
oh God,
Judah said unto Onan, go unto thy brother's wife and marry her and raise up seed to thy brother. And Odin knew that the seed should not be his. And it came to pass when he went in unto his brother's wife that he spilled it onto the ground, lest that he should give seed to his brother. And the thing which he did displeased the Lord. Wherefore God killed him for spilling his seed onto the floor, not for doing stuff with his dead brother's wife. I just hate having to reason with people like this. Just be like, and
people who are inherently unreasonable.
So you're saying that if there's sexual activity or murder or any weird sodomy per se in a book, we should get rid of the book? And where did sodomy get invented? Why do you know? Oh, okay. And they'll be like, but it's the Bible.
Exactly.
I can't reason
because again, no, we got to wrap it up. But yeah, because it's not about principles. It's not designed to be applied equally. It's designed to enforce legally superiority between other groups.
Well, we are banning books. It is one of the most violent and sexual books there is, and Davis School District took it seriously, and they looked at the Bible. They read the Bible apparently. They're like, "Whoa, yeah, that's some heavy stuff, man. I don't know that middle school and elementary school kids should get it." So score 1 for consistency and being principled. So here on that. And if you're wondering, look, we give the Bible and Jesus a lot of credit on this show. We just talked about it in an earlier story. And New Testament has wonderful parts. Sermon on the Mount is terrific. Love that Jesus threw out the money changers from the temple, etc. But it's got some troublesome parts. And the Old Testament is a horror show. And so, like for example, I'll give you an example, and you tell me if they made the right decision or the wrong decision. Okay? So in the Sodom and Gomorrah story, a mob comes to Lot's door and demands to rape the angels inside. We go, wow, okay, man, Sodom and Gomorrah, they had some issues, okay? And so Lot comes up with a compromise. It makes sense because he's a godly man and he's saved at the end of that story. He says, don't rape the angels. Instead, rape my daughters. What? Okay. In fact, so I looked it up just to confirm, because even though I've said that story many times, but I wanted to find a website that talked about it, like preferably a religious site, and I found one that asked this question: why did Lot offer up his daughters to be gang raped? Well, that is a good question. Let's dive in, but probably not for elementary school. So I agree with Utah.
Yeah, I mean, and in that same very story, what was the city basically? Because it was like Bronze Age Las Vegas, and God ended up like dumping a giant cauldron of lava onto the city, and someone turned around and turned into salt. You know what I'm saying? Like in the Old Testament, God stays destroying everybody. You know what I'm saying? They're gambling too much. There's too much prostitution going on in this town. I'm just gonna murder everybody. You know what I'm saying? There's so much of that, and you pointed. I wasn't even thinking about that part of the story, which is incredibly. I mean, let's face it, that's gross, that's disgusting, that's insane. If you want to take a look at it, like, yeah, this book has an insane amount of violence and sex in it. And like you pointed out, especially the New Testament, you can't get enough of it.
Yeah, in the Old Testament. They banned a book in one of the other places, not in Utah, where it was 2 penguins that were males that were not lovers, because it's important that the penguins are not gay, okay? But they took care of a baby penguin together, because they were decent penguins, I guess. I don't know what the morality of penguins are, and people are like, ban it. But the raping of the daughters, etc., totally okay. And by the way, here, I'll give you another one, because there's endless in the Old Testament. So at one point, God tells the Israelites, hey, go trick another tribe, I forget which tribe, and tell them, okay, you can have our daughters, okay, as long as you do circumcision. And the minute they do get rid of their foreskin and they're in tremendous pain, they'll be weak. Go murder them all. And they did. And God's like, way to go.
The story of Job. I'm just gonna destroy his life for fun.
Okay, look, guys, you can take wonderful things out of the Bible. You can take terrible things out of the Bible, okay? But when you start banning books, The Old Testament's got to be near the top. I mean, if you're worried about the children, what about your children? Would you talk to your children about any of this stuff, right?
A Texas school district is pulling the Bible from its library shelves. It's among some 40 titles now under review in the Keller Independent School District in Texas, along with Anne Frank's diary and illustrated version. Right now, Keller ISD's administration is asking our campus staff and librarians to review books that were challenged last year to determine if they meet the requirements of the new policy. Books will be returned to the libraries as soon as it is confirmed that they comply with the new policy. So Lisa, the school district apparently got accused of having books with sexual content, so they put under review all of these books. There were 3 parent complaints about the Bible, one was withdrawn, citing sexual content and violence. My question is, were these people, these anonymous individuals, asleep when they learned that kindergarten through 2nd graders were being taught across the country sexually explicit content like body parts in vivid detail? You don't believe me? Google what they teach in New York City private schools. So to your point, the book Gender Queer, the Washington Post, hardly a conservative publication, as you know.
Yes.
This is how they describe one of the scenes in that book that was also targeted. A sexual fantasy of the authors is depicted in which an apparently teenage youth is about to engage in a sexual act with an older bearded man. But you contrast that, Emily, with the Bible, the most read book in all of human history. In fact, over the last 50 years, nearly 4 billion copies have been sold. Compare that to Harry Potter, which is number 3 at 400 million. Not only that, foundation of the world's largest religion, a classic historical text. If you don't believe it in the religious context, at least we can be appreciated in that context, but that's the one we're removing.
The fact that because one person or 3 people put the Bible on that is absolutely horrifying. This is when the school administrators need to step up and say, absolutely not. You know what? We don't need a committee right now to discuss this for 40 minutes. It's going back on the shelf. But every day without the Bible is a day lost, and that Bible should be back on the shelves.
Agreed.
It's a day lost. Every day without the Bible on shelves is a day lost. Like, if you, there's an illustration of supremacy there. It's the most read book ever, it's the most sold book ever, so therefore it can't be taken off any shelves. It's a constant reminder that they think they're better than everyone else.
Our religion's number 1. Okay, so let's note a couple of things here. Number 1, if you notice, Kayleigh McEnany said, you could check that out in New York private schools. Oh, so we're not talking about public schools. So you're pretending that we're talking about public schools, but your examples from a private school, all the legislation you're passing is about public schools. Oh, right, that gets to the main point. You're the one who wanted to ban books. You're the one who actually passed legislation in places like Tennessee. They had a book burning in Tennessee, okay? That's the right wing, that wasn't us. Sexually explicit and violent imagery, well, then they should ban the Bible because it's filled with it, right? And now that 1 to 3 parents, as they said, complained about it, they're like, oh, what are we gonna do now? Just listen to parents? That's what you said. You said, oh, well, I got 1 to 3 right-wing parents who are complaining about this book that's like won prizes and etc. and is like revered, but I got 1 to 3 randos who are complaining. Now, if the Bible didn't have any sex or violence in it, we might say, hey, that's fair. Look, guys, it's Dr. Seuss. I mean, it's Jesus in a hat. It's it's totally benign. JR, is there any sex or violence in the Bible?
Just a little bit. I'm gonna give you this quick take on it, at least there. But I want to remind you what Kayleigh McEnany said in that last clip. She said, talking about one of the books that's worth being banned. An apparently teenage youth is about to engage in a sexual act with an older bearded man. Here's a moment from the Bible, Genesis chapter 19, 30 through 38, really fast. Then Lot left Zoar and lived in the mountains along with his 2 daughters who were with him, for he was afraid to dwell in Zoar. He and his 2 daughters lived in a cave, and the firstborn said to the younger, our father is old and there's no man on earth to have relations with us after the manner of all the earth. Let us make our father drink wine and let us lie with him, so that we may preserve the lineage of our father. Let's have sex with our dad. So they made their father drink wine that night, and the firstborn went in and had relations with her father. He did not know when she lay down or when she arose somehow. On the next day, the firstborn said to the younger, indeed, last night I had relations with my father. Let us make him drink wine tonight also, so that you may go in and have relations with him, so that we may preserve the lineage of our father. So they made their father drink wine that night also. Then the younger arose and lay with him, and he did not know when she lay down or when she arose. Lastly, therefore both the daughters of Lot were pregnant by their father. The firstborn bore a son, and they called him Moab. He's the father of the Moabites to this day. The younger also gave birth to a son and called his name Ben-Ami. He's the father of the Ammonites to this day. Isn't that a great story?
Well, I mean, Bible passages advocating for incest, or as the right apparently refers to it, family values.
Yeah, so if they had put that in a modern book that said, hey, by the way, you shouldn't hate black people or gay people or something, and then they put in a story about how 2 underage girls slept with their dad, the dad didn't notice, and they both became pregnant, and then that was a great thing that should be celebrated, the right wing would lose their minds. They would, what is this? This is the worst story I've ever heard. And by the way, they're not wrong. That is a horrible, horrible story. And it's right there in the Bible. You're gonna let 2 graders read that? Kayleigh McEnany, are you gonna let 2nd graders read that?
And they don't even process the hypocrisy. They see it as different things as they're talking. They're like, can you imagine this book banning? Our next story, we encourage banning of books that talk about transgender and gay themes. They don't even link one to the other.
From the can of worms, but just take one out.
Yeah. And by the way, they removed Anne Frank's diary in some of the schools. Unreal, unreal.
Oklahoma State Superintendent Ryan Walters is a devout Christian, and he has decided that the entire state, the state of Oklahoma, my home state, is his mission field. Watch his press releases, his public statements, his Twitter feed, and you will see a man and movement that is ideology first, right? Ideology, theology first, not education first. His obsession these days is with woke culture. Preacher Walters posted this on Twitter. In Oklahoma, the shelves are not empty, no porn, no indoctrination. We are fighting back to keep our classrooms from going woke. Now check the video. It shows 6 books that are stacked on an otherwise empty shelf. Included on that stack are 2 books by former Secretary of Education for the Reagan administration back in the 1980s. He's a longtime politician and pundit, a guy named William Bennett. Bennett is a hardline conservative, probably best known for gambling away millions of his own dollars in Vegas. At the same time, he was publishing a book called The Book of Virtues. And oh, look, it's David Barton. David Barton publishes history books, even though he is not an actual credentialed historian. In his world, the founding fathers, they were all devout Christians. They were building a Christian nation. David Barton thinks that non-heterosexuals are supposed to be punished by God, according to the Bible. He says being gay is a choice. It's also an aberration. He believes that God, his God, drew our border lines, like our national borders. And his own so-called historical profile of Thomas Jefferson was just so loaded with obvious errors, the book was pulled by his own publisher, a Christian publisher, Thomas Nelson Publishing. They just pulled his book off of the shelves back in 2012. And let's talk about the Bible. Okay, fine. You want to ban pornographic materials in schools to protect our children? Well, how would you feel about a book where God's people were taught how to beat their slaves, like instructions, how to beat your slave, where rape victims were forced to marry their rapists after paying off the dad, where daughters had sex with their father because his sperm was more convenient than having to travel to a nearby town to get pregnant. A book where virgin girls were kidnapped at God's command after families were slaughtered, right? They killed the moms and dads and sisters and brothers, but they took the virgin girls at God's command. This is a book of incest and human sacrifice, infanticide, genocide. Beyond all that, Oklahoma State Superintendent of Public Instruction wants the Bible taught as fact to kids. Imagine the science and the history lessons there. Okay, kids, humankind came from a couple of divinely conjured garden nudists. And donkeys could speak Hebrew. And there was a floating zoo that saved 8 righteous people during a global flood, which left only contradicting geological evidence. And there were fiery chariots that could fly in the sky, and people lived to be 1,000 years old. And there's the rebellious Jonah. He was sentenced to live for 3 days inside a giant underwater prison fish. People pulled tax money out of fish mouths. There are giants and monsters and fallen angels impregnating human women. Teach these kids out of the book of Revelation. What a wonderful book, with stories about the whore of Babylon, a dolled-up, 7-headed dragon-riding space prostitute that slaughters a huge portion of the planet. Superintendent Walters. Book bans are obscene anyway, but if you're going to piss and moan about indoctrination and pornography, and you're stacking your rationalizations upon the Bible, this is your go-to book. This is your grade A, weapons grade, Olympic level book. This is hypocrisy. You are obviously not pushing education. You are pushing a state church. This is like a Christian version of Sharia law. It's certainly an abuse of power. It's an abuse of your office.